I own too many Criterions. Now, behind me is my Criterion collection. Now, the Criterion Collection is a company that releases Blu-rays, DVDs, and 4Ks. Not so much DVDs anymore, but mostly Blu-rays and 4Ks of important films, films that are older, films that are foreign, films that are modern, like maybe even in the same year they released. And they're usually more, I guess you could say, not always, but sort of avant-garde or highbrow. And they release a lot of great titles, and I feel like it really helps you gain more knowledge about film history and how film has progressed as a medium, and cultural important films as well, and seeing films from other countries and seeing other perspectives of the world. So I have a lot of them, and I have a large backlog as a result. And I needed more of a push to get through my backlog. Right now is 50 titles. So I wanted to create a series where each episode I go through one of the films that is under my Criterion backlog, watch it, and give some quick thoughts about it. So for this episode, I'm going to be watching Repulsion. This is a 1965 film by Roman Polanski. I've been meaning to check this one out. I've not watched it yet. It's in the collection, and I have it. So I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to give some quick thoughts. See you after the film. Okay. So I just watched the film. For this episode, I don't know if I'm going to change it in later episodes, but I'm going to keep it pretty candid and not very scripted. Just kind of, because I literally just finished the film a few minutes ago, and I just kind of want to dive right into my thoughts about Repulsion by Roman Polanski. I believe this is his first film in the English language. It was released in 1965. Yep, 1965. And I thought this film was great. I really thought that it displayed a sort of mental breakdown and the form of almost psychosis that the main character was going through, and trauma and paranoia. I thought it displayed that very well through not only the visual language of the film, through the sort of swaying and handheld camera work, but also through the surreal production design and the changing sizes of the apartment, how the textures of the apartment change, like the scene where it's the clay wall and her hand imprints on it. And also the dream scenes where we see her being attacked physically, but mostly sexually. And I just found the film pretty impactful, especially the final shot, which sort of, I guess, answers a lot of questions throughout the film. So we're following this lead female protagonist, which is played by Catherine. I'm not going to say her last name correctly. I believe it's Deneuve. But she's mainly a French actress, and I've seen her in Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and I'm sure another film that I can't quite remember, but I usually really like her, and she was fantastic in this film. She really committed to this sort of, like I said before, mental breakdown of the character that she was playing. And she was playing a sort of almost reminded me of a character that like Sissy Spacek would play, in the way that it's an adult woman, probably in her mid to late 20s, but she acts it out and behaves sort of like a child because she has so much innocence, and that only adds to sort of the edge and uncomfortableness that the film is trying to portray, especially because it deals with sexual abuse, and that's really the core of the film. And this is a film to be watched again and analyzed, I think, is display in finding out more about what the film is trying to convey about this abuse and why the character acts this way. It's sort of hinted at the end of the film when we see the photograph of her as a child in her family where she's staring at, I don't know if it's her father, but it's an older male figure, and you're sort of supposed to interpret, I believe, that she was sexually abused as a child by an older male figure in her family. And that's why she has this sort of natural fear and paranoia of men, because that's what the film is about, this paranoia of men from this woman protagonist, but overall sort of analyzing the relationship between men and women, but mostly men to women, in a sort of predator versus prey nature. And we see this through the rabbit in the film, the dead rabbit that is meant to be cooked at the beginning, but then left aside. And we see it rot and decay throughout the film after the main protagonist takes a sort of, not liking to it, but she takes it out of the fridge and sets it out, and we see it rot away throughout the film, and we see flies go at it. You can hear them going around with the superb audio design in the film, which not adds to the paranoia. But back to the rabbit. Rabbit, of course, is a sort of prey, and of course it was preyed upon and that it was killed for the meal that was going to be prepared. But it sits out, and we see it decay away and just be eaten away by these flies, which have now become the predator. And this predator versus prey relationship is meant to represent, like, the men to the women in the film. Well, mainly the main character, in that she's preyed upon by men, and that mostly for sexual advances. And we see that relationship being displayed in the rabbit. As the rabbit decays throughout the film, we also see the main protagonist mentally decay, and the flies attacking her represent the men, and just kind of how the prey is withered away as the protagonist is withered away, as she is the prey in this relationship between her and the few men we see in the film. And we see mainly two attackers. We see the first man, which isn't as violent as the second man, as he is taking a romantic interest in her, and he is forceful, though, as he bursts his way into his apartment. But I don't believe he tries to physically force himself upon her in the apartment, but she retaliates against him, because obviously she feels uncomfortable and afraid of him, and kills him. And later we see this through the man. This man is way more violent in his approach. He basically tries to rape her, and she kills him again. And it makes sense in that the film, she gets increasingly more, how do I put it? The approach that the man takes is more violent, as the first man is pretty pushy, but he isn't trying to, like, sexually assault her like the second man is. It makes sense as, like, her paranoia and her fear is getting worse. We see the approach the man is taking getting worse. And I don't know, maybe there's something to be said about were the men even there, and you're guessing that they are because you see that people react to them at the end. But then again, this is one of those films where you don't really know what's real and what's not real. And that's kind of why I liked it. It entrances you into this, like, dreamy state of mind, mostly in, like, the middle of the film, when the protagonist is just in the apartment, and it's a lot of, like, just, like, slow building and playing with the set design, like I mentioned earlier, and a lot of quiet. There's not much dialogue in this film, which I think it pulls off very well in creating this, like, hazy environment and feeling. And I really appreciated it, and the film looks incredible, black and white, but it has, like I said, this sort of swaying, almost, I don't want to say, I guess I'll say amateur, more so I guess I'd say low budget, but I think it adds to sort of the edge and grudge of the film. And the film did give me, I don't want to sound sort of like film student, like, oh, this reminds me of French New, but it did remind me of French New Wave. Not only because, it takes place in London, but maybe just because Catherine Deneuve, or however you pronounce her name, sorry, was in the film. She's mainly a French actress, and that's what I know her from. Or I don't know if it's just because it's a European city and it's sort of like crowded streets and very, like, candid, like, natural film work, just following the actress through the streets, what looks like regular people in the streets, or because the apartment that she's in feels so real. And as you know, in, like, French New Wave films, it's a lot of kind of just people making films that aren't necessarily high budget or can afford the means to be in a set, so we see them filming in sort of just their friends' apartments. And the apartment in the film is obviously a set in the way that they played with it and the way they moved it around, but it felt very naturalistic, and the very small and tightness of it, which added to the sort of tension and closed paranoia feel, but added to a sense of naturalism and made it feel more real. And I can really appreciate that about it. So there's much to be said about the film. I've been rambling. I'm not sure if I've sort of taken the film the way that Roman Polanski approached, but I mean, the funny, I guess I shouldn't say funny, but the ironic thing about this, I've only seen, in terms of Roman Polanski, I've only seen this and Rosemary's Baby, which have a similar feeling in terms of the thematic elements of like I haven't seen Rosemary's Baby in not a while, but like half a year, so I'm not as fresh on that as this, but they both depicted women's struggles with men in terms of a sort of fear. In Rosemary's Baby, it was more so like her being pregnant with a man's baby and dealing with sort of the consequences of being pregnant and bearing a child, and also deals with rape in that film. But this film also deals with rape, and it's just very interesting to me because, like I said, ironic, because Roman Polanski, of course, is a total, utter scum of a human being, because he is a rapist of also a very young girl as an adult, and this film is tackling the assault of a young girl and how that ruined her life in terms of her mental state. It ruined her and how she perceives men and her relationships. And I know the film is trying to make you feel bad for the woman and take these feelings with her. So to see a director go towards this kind of work, and Rosemary's Baby, which deals with sexual assault, it doesn't deal with them in a light way, like takes them seriously, and then commit the heinous act of rape, is just very confusing to me. And I'm not trying to say like I devalue these films because Roman Polanski made them, simply because he made them, sorry, but I just I find it more interesting how someone can tackle this kind of subject matter and then later on go and commit the heinous act. It's very interesting to me. But who's to say, really? I still really like this film. I thought it was really great, and I really appreciate the look of the film, the thematic elements of the film. It had that zany 60s style of like very sort of not in your face, but like the shaky camera work, more touchy subject matter, because in the 60s we saw that transition in film. Even though this wasn't in the Hollywood system, so I'm not as hip to how censorship and what was allowed in film was like overseas, because this is a British film. But I just know in Hollywood it was changing in that way. It reminded me of the film Seconds. What's it? I forgot the director's name, but Frankenheimer maybe. But I found them sort of similar in how they captured the sort of mental mental, I don't know how to say it, franticness in the camera work. And that's really all I have to say. That I really enjoyed this film. This was Spine 483. I'm not going in order here. I'm just kind of picking out what I want to watch. But overall, I would give this film a 4 out of 5 or 8 out of 10. Let's go out of 5. 4 out of 5. But anyway, yeah, I just kind of wanted to discuss this film. And in the next episode, we'll go over the next film that is in the backlog, the one that I want to watch. I'm not sure what that is yet. It really depends on how I'm feeling that day, or, you know, what I want to talk about, or what I'm just interested in, really. But it'll probably make for a good discussion, as most films in the Criterion Collection do. So until then, see you in the next one.